Any chance you are wanting to learn how to design a plant stand using VCarve Pro and making it on your CNC? Check this out. I think I just probably need to get a bigger plant, but just keep watching.
All right, so let's jump right into it. I'm starting off with a basic 12 by 12 worksheet. The legs for this planter are 10 inches tall, and the planter tray itself is a 10-inch circle. So I'm just going to find a piece of material in my shop that is about 12 by 12 to work off of. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, this number here, the thickness of your material, I'm going to use 0.75 for this illustration. However, I'm going to encourage you to use a digital caliper to check the actual thickness of the material that you choose to use for your project. And that way this can be precise. So just keep that in mind, that you'll need to customize this thickness to your material that you choose to use. All right, moving right along, I'm going to assume you have a basic working knowledge of VCarve at this point. This is a project-based design help video, so we're not going to go over the ins and outs of everything, but I do hope you can pick up some helpful tips here. So I'm going to keep these settings the way that I normally have them. We're going to 0 the Z off the material surface. I personally like to use the bottom left-hand corner for my XY position. A lot of people like to use the center, but to me that requires more work because you then have to find the center. It's a little bit easier to just look at a corner and know that that's your XY. So sticking with that, gonna hit OK. And let's kick it off simply by drawing our planter tray. This is kind of a plant stand, and so we're going to start off with the tray portion. So we got to draw a circle. Over here, create vectors. We're going to select draw circle, and if you want it to be nice and precise, this makes it very easy, and it actually remembers what I've done the last time. So I'm just going to put diameter 10 inches. That way it can fit a variety of pot sizes. And this part up here is telling you where the center point of your circle is going to be. So this is a 12 by 12 page. So 6 by 6 is going to be in the middle. So we're just going to hit create. But then we're going to do another one because we don't want this to just be a flat piece of wood. I think it'd be cool to carve it out and add some depth to it. So I'm going to put an 8.5 inch circle in the center, and we'll basically program it so that this is a bowl bit carve in the center, and then we're left with a nice little ridge around the edge. All right, so we have our circles, and now we are going to do the text portion. If you are interested in doing a VCarve as part of this project, turns it into a 3-bit project, which frankly is a little bit annoying to change out that many bits for one project. So if you don't feel like having an engraving here, you can skip this part. But if you want to practice your VCarves and you're programming for that, follow along. The quote I'm going to do says, "Bloom where you are planted." And I want to do 2 different fonts just for it to be a little more aesthetically pleasing. So first I'm just going to do Bloom. And I already selected this Mama Mabel script that I had. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger and try to get that centered. And if you're not sure how to get like a quick center, you can select the item you want to center and you can hit function F9. And it'll automatically snap it right to the center of the page if you don't want to have to navigate through this. And otherwise you could use align selected objects and use that tool. But just another little keyboard shortcut that I enjoy using, that function F9 to center certain things. All right, so that's the bloom. Then I'm going to do the where you are planted. I'm going to choose a different font. And I think I just want to do this one in caps, and something that's easy to carve. This one. And then we'll use that function F9 again. Right here. It's going to overlap, and then you can just use your down arrow and get it where you want it to be. Looks like this cursive font is on a slight, you know, that M dips down a little bit and we don't want those to run into each other. So I might just bump that up a little bit, and I might actually even play with that just by grabbing this corner and just slightly rotate it. There we go. I like that. And I'm actually going to center this as a group. So if you, you can either select it all like that, just dragging your mouse around both of it, or if you drag right to left and just even touch the two things you want to connect, it'll select both of them. And again, I love keyboard shortcuts, so I'm going to do a Control G to group those, and I think that works. Yep. So now that that's considered like one group, I'm going to do Function F9 again. Boom, perfectly centered. And those little keyboards, like shortcuts, I just can't say enough about them. They speed up your workflow. Okay, before we go any further, we need to fix this issue. We have some overlapping lines, and that happens anytime you use a cursive font. So now that I need to actually work on that, I'm going to ungroup them. You can use Control U to ungroup them again, and see it's by itself now when I select it. I think there are multiple ways to do this, but here's one way to get rid of these overlapping lines. Since this is still considered text, first you need to make this a curve. And so this button here under Create Vectors kind of looks like a T, Convert to Curves. Go ahead and click that. You can tell that it has turned into a dotted line here, and then you can kind of select each letter individually now. So that's going to allow us to grab now this tool under Edit Objects, the Interactive Trim tool. You can just call those the scissors. And as soon as you see your scissors, see they're closed here, and now you see them open, that means they're able to snip that line that you're hovering over. And that's all you have to do. It's really fun. And sometimes you get a little scissor happy and you just hit Control Z because you cut the wrong line. Helps if you zoom in. And I love using an external mouse to help me design. So I have a little mouse with a scrolly wheel thingy, technical term. And that helps you zoom in and zoom out really quickly. So now just double checking. We have all of our lines nice and smooth, no overlaps. So now what you need to do is grab your transform mode, just get your regular mouse back and select all this and group it to make sure you're not going to have any parts floating around you. And then I'm going to group this all again because that's all going to get programmed the same way as far as the toolpath goes. So there you have it. This is the part that's actually going to allow you to set a plant down on it in a pot. So let's go ahead and get started on the legs. We're going to finish all of our design work first, and then we'll do all of our programming. Before we go any further on to the next phase of design, go ahead and save your project right now to make sure you don't lose the work that you've already done. And we're going to go ahead and add another sheet so that we can keep working in the same file and get started on the legs of the planter stand. So go over here to your Sheets tab, and we'll name Sheet 1 as planter, I guess. And then we'll add another one, and we will call that legs. And it appears to be over there. And you just kind of see this one in the distance, and you just double click on it when you want to go back to it, or double click on the one you want to work on now. So go back to your drawing tab at the top, and now we're going to work on the legs. So I showed you before this video started what the end product looks like. So we have some cool like mid-century modern type legs, and you can alter this design however you'd like to. This is just a guide. But I basically started with a rectangle, and I made my rectangle 2 inches wide And I don't know why that says 0.75, but I did mine 2 inches wide and 10 inches tall. And right here in this option, it gives you the chance to choose if you want to do a radius on your corners. Instead of a sharp corner like this, it gives you the chance to make a rounded corner, and I just thought that would look cool if it were rounded off. And so I did a radius external, because if you do internal, it's going to go like that. I thought this looked nicer. So I did 0.125 and just going to hit create. And for whatever reason, this guy went all the way up there. So I'm going to just change my cursor over here and bring it down to where we're working. So this is how I started off with the design of that leg. And the nice thing is we need 4 of these, but you do not have to draw it 4 times. We'll be able to duplicate this or copy and paste it. So this is how the leg started. And I basically thought, you know what, I'd like to put a cool angle on it. And so what I did was, you can copy, Control C, and paste, Control V, and grab it. And then what I did was I just rotated it to the degree that I thought looked neat. And I think I went for about like a 15-degree angle. This is, design is supposed to be fun. So kind of take it how you want it to look. And we're going to essentially overlap it. And we're going to use those scissors again when we kind of get the angle that we want. If you want to make it a little longer so that it's more overlapped, you can. Might just go a little bit further if I can find it. Go a tiny bit more. And then I want it to be like halfway. I didn't really want like a super chunky foot down here. So any part of the leg that you're seeing behind this pink is going to disappear. So right now we're basically using a rectangle to create a new profile edge. And I think I like about where that is. So now I'm going to head back over to those scissors here, and we're going to remove all this stuff just by clicking. And now we have this really cool mid-century modern style leg. Now the last thing we need on this leg is the half flap, kind of like an inset cutout for the tray part to sit in there. So that way you don't have to use any tools to assemble this. It's just going to hopefully have a nice snug fit. So what are we going to use to do this part, class? You guessed it, a rectangle. And now I remember why this was set at 0.75, because that's the thickness of the material, my hypothetical material thickness. I haven't actually chosen a piece of wood yet. I'm recording this before I carve the actual planter. And so once I figure out the actual thickness, I'm going to match it to make sure it's a nice snug fit. So here we go. And actually, we don't need a radius on this one. And I'll show you why in a second. But we're going to create that, see where it landed, switch back to our transform mode, aka just our regular cursor that allows us to grab and play with objects. And here, you basically want to decide how far do you want your half flap to go in. And picture this, if this is kind of where your tray will be and your planter pot bottom will be on top of this, how much of this leg do you want sticking up? This is the part where you get to customize it. You could have it be flush. If you wanted a really clean look, you could do that. I just kind of liked it sticking up a little bit for some reason. And I wouldn't really, over here, if we just switch screens here, we did this inner circle 8.5 and this outer at 10 inches, which means we had 1.5 inches for play all around, which means the thickness here is 0.75. So that keeps coming up as kind of our magic number. So I wouldn't really want this, since we're going to cut this out, I wouldn't want this to be deeper than 0.75. Personally, I'd probably want it to match that thickness of that rim we put on. So if this line of the leg is on 3, that means we would want this line to not be beyond 3.75. So you can either use this X scale down here to tell you where your cursor is, or you can look at that line that's moving between the 3 and the 4 and know that, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 3.5 right here, which means this is going to be 3.75. Really close to there, but I don't have my cursor exactly on it. So we're going to try to drag this and watch the numbers. Oh, 3.7513. You know, that's good enough for me. So I'm going to call that good. And now that we have that, we are going to go back to our scissor tool again, our interactive trim tool, because it's just fun. Boop. And you got to make that noise to make it a successful cut. Boop. Guys, that was pretty easy, right? And it kind of looks like a professional looking leg style. And we did that using a series of rectangles and just snipping off the extra lines. Job well done. If you've made it this far, if you're watching on your phone and kind of designing with me, job well done. Last step on here, because we know that this tray is a circle. So it's not going to fit real snug back in here. And to be honest, it's just, this isn't going to cut like this because we have round bits. So obviously, how can a round bit make a perfectly square corner when it's traveling this way? It's not going to. So we have to add what are called, and I hope I'm saying this right, fillets. That's what everyone else on the internet is saying. I want to say fillet. Maybe I'm just a big steak lover. I don't know. But we have to add some fillets. So we're going to go down here to our fillet tool. I hope people who made this software aren't cringing because I'm mispronouncing it right now. But here we go. So this is the Create Fillet tool. And we're going to do a dog bone version. And that will allow us to get a nice tight fit. And it says that you use your tool radius for your fillet size. So I'm using a 1/4 inch bit on this profile cut, and half of 0.25 is 0.125. So that's all set up, and you don't hit apply or anything. There is no apply button. You'll just notice your cursor changes with this little curve, and you literally just click where you want it. Just clicking, and see how it kind of resembles a dog bone? And that's why it's called a dog bone. So that will allow this circular tray to fit snug as a bug in a rug all the way in there and have a more secure fit. Awesome job. This is the fun part. We select this and we see that we have all one line, which makes it easy. And we can hit copy and paste 3 times because we need 3 more legs. You probably could get away with only 3 legs on this, but I opted for 4. So there's 1, and there's 2, and 3, and 4. Guys, we did it. We did 4 legs and a planter stand with an engraving. Celebrate a little bit, but we're not done yet, so hang on to your hats. All right, time to do our programming. So we have our toolpaths tab open. It is staying open thanks to this world's tiniest little button here, which is a push pin, holds it in place. We're going to do our, I guess we can do these in order that it will actually happen. So let's do our VCarve second. Almost had you there, guys. Thanks for keeping me accountable. We're actually going to do, so imagine this is our raw piece of wood. Just back up here with me for a second. We're going to select this inner ring because that's going to be our bowl bit, and we're going to carve that out first. So select that inner circle, find your pocket toolpath, select that, and your start depth is going to be 0, which just means you're at the top of the wood. 0.4 is a pretty standard, from what I've noticed, good depth of cut for a little tray or something like this. Doesn't need to be real deep. And then I'm using a bowl bit, a 3/4 inch bowl bit, and you can use whatever you have, but this is what I have, and it is the Astra coated white side 1372 bowl and tray bit, 3/4 inch diameter, 1/4 inch radius on the shaft, or 1/4 inch shank, and yeah, that's where we're at with that bit. And these are the settings that I have pre-programmed thanks to being able to download tool databases from both from Bits and Bits and Tools Today. So if you haven't ever figured out how to do that, head back to this video that I have up in the corner for you right now. A lot of solid tips and tricks for getting started with VCarve, and that includes showing you how to import a tool database so that you don't have to figure out all these numbers on your own. You can get the pre-programmed versions that have already been tested by other companies and pretty much deemed safe. Sometimes you'll be able to go faster with some of these settings, but that's something you kind of have to figure out on your own. But they're really good starting points. So bowl bit, and we are going to do, this has it at 4 passes, which is probably very conservative because on a 0.75 diameter bowl bit, you can pretty much go half the diameter in one pass, which is basically 0.4. So I'm going to change this to only 2 passes down here. And, one pass, it would pretty much get it at the depth we need, but I'm going to go ahead and just do 2 passes, and it might be a little cleaner that way too. And I'm going to name this pocket. And I'm going to note that I'm using my bowl bit just to remind me, as though I would forget, but I'm going to hit calculate. And if you want to preview it right away, you can. And it shows you a little animation of what you did, and you can rotate it around to check it out in the 3D view, which is really cool. And then we're just going to close that. We're good to go. If you're anything like me, you'd be hitting Control S like every 2 seconds to make sure you don't lose your work. So go ahead and save it and keep on going. So at this point in the carve, we have our bowl, and now it's time to switch to a V bit and do a VCarve. So we are going to start programming our VCarve engraving toolpath using this button right here. And go ahead and click on that. And so there's 2 ways you can do this right now. And I had this set up already in advance, but you can pretty much choose to do a start depth of 0.4. Just make sure that after you put your VCarve bit in, you are re-zeroing it from the top of the surface of the material again, not from the bottom of the bowl you just carved out. If you make this 0 right after you put your V-bit in the router or in your spindle, you can lower it and just tap your new bottom of your carve that you just did with your bowl bit, and that'll be your new 0. And then I really don't want my carve to go deep at all, so I did a flat depth of 0.125. And I'm using a 60-degree V-bit. And like I said, settings are already in here and ready to go. So I'm just going to, again, come down to the bottom of this tab and call this the planter VCarve. And I will know that it's the 60 because I will just go ahead and type 60 in there. And that way, when you're transferring these files over to your actual machine to execute the carve, it's just these little steps. I've learned that I need everything to be dummy proofed for me, because you get distracted. You might get a phone call. You might have music playing or have your ear protection on. Whatever the case, you might just get too much in the rhythm and forget. And so seeing this 60 will remind you to, in fact, chuck up your 60-degree V-bit. So calculating on that. And we're going to reset the preview so that we can see everything we've done so far. And I just get in the habit of clicking these boxes. I think you have to have them toggled to be able to preview all toolpaths. But so we'll have it carve out, and that went probably way too fast. But here's where it's at. It's going to carve out 2 different passes with your bowl bit. That's how we programmed it. So this is still the first path. So maybe I'll just have to tell you a joke or something. Like, what do you call a cow that stands on 3 legs? Lean beef. Okay, that was bad. All right, here's the VCarve. And usually if it looks good on the simulation, usually it's gonna work out nicely, but I would just caution you to double check all your settings every time. But to me, that looks really cool. Okay, Control Save, keep moving on, and we're gonna go back to our 2D view with this tab. And we've done the bowl bit carving, we've done the V-carve, and now it's time to program the profile, which will finally let us cut out our tray for our planter stand. So the profile toolpath is right here under toolpath operations. And here we go. Start depth 0, top, because that's the top of the material still. And here's the little note, and I learned this trick from Mark Lindsay. Whatever your thickness is, it might not be 0.75. This is my hypothetical thickness of my material, 0.75. He instructs to add on 5/1000ths of an inch or something like that, just to make sure your bit truly goes through your material and you have a better chance of having a cleaner like cut through. If you don't cut all the way through your material, speaking from experience, when you use a router to clean up the edges on these projects, it's going to be fine. Remember, it always looks worse before it looks better. Don't sweat it. But this is why I have 0.755 for my cut depth, trying to get it to go all the way through the material so I have a little bit less sanding to do. So I am using the 1/4 inch 46202K spiral cut down cut Spectra bit, and these are the settings that were recommended for it. So there's that. 6 passes is way more conservative than it needs to be, I'll tell you. But like if you're using plywood for this, more passes is better since plywood tends to chip out. If you're using a nice hardwood, people even push it much further than this. People will do a 1/2 inch depth at a time with a 1/4 inch bit. Depends on your CNC, depends on whether you're using a router or a spindle, and it depends on the bit. So I really encourage you to research what speeds, feeds, passes, depths are best for your scenario, your machine, your bits. Okay. This is just what works for me. So this is the profile cut, and I do not want it to be inside left. I want it to be outside right. If we were to do inside, it would be cutting inside this line and we would lose that 0.75 margin that we talked about. So yeah, definitely outside. And then a good practice would be to add tabs to your toolpath. And 0.125 are good. They're tiny little tabs. They break off easily when you want them to break off, and they hold your cut out material to your workpiece, which should be fastened down with either clamps around the edges or double-sided tape underneath. However you want to do it. I like to shoot brad nails in through the corners and then pry them out when I'm done. But yeah, adding tabs is a nice practice to just make sure your material, when it gets that final cut, doesn't turn this into a flying disc and launch itself across your shop. So even 2 is fine. As long as the rest of your material is secured to your table, you'll be good to go. Okay, so name it. We're going to name it planter profile. And I know that it's going to be with my 1/4 inch bit. So I'm going to put 0.25. I'm going to hit calculate. And now this warning is coming up because I told you to do that 0.755, because it's saying, whoa, if you do that, it's going to cut through your material and into your wasteboard. And I'm like, exactly. Welcome to the party, VCarve Pro. Just say okay, because you're smarter than the machine. Don't forget that. So here we go. We're going to, let's just preview the one we just did since we've done that already. So it just carves it out all nice, and it shows you still have your tabs in there. And so when you're taking this off your table, you can either just use, I like to just use like a chisel and a hammer and just tap it. And that's that. It's looking really good. All right, save. Let's move on to our legs 2D view. Over here to your other sheet with your legs on it. Guess what, guys? This one's way easier. It's just a profile toolpath. And since you just finished cutting out your planter stand tray thingy with your profile bit, with your 1/4 inch bit, you're still good to go. You don't have to swap out bits at this point. You just need to put on your fresh piece of material onto your wasteboard and get ready to have some fun carving these legs out. Arrange them however you want to have them on your material, however you need to, and select them all. Go back to your profile toolpath, and we're going to use the same exact settings we just programmed to cut out the tray. Once again, you can edit your passes if you'd like them to be more aggressive or more conservative. We are going to keep that outside profile cut so that it comes around the outside edge so we don't lose any of our nice design that we set forth. We're going to add tabs again. It's just good practice. If you do have a really good hold down system in place and you trust yourself, then you don't have to do the tabs, but entirely up to you. And this, is still only even suggesting 2 on each one. So that works. We're going to save this as planter legs. And we know it's still the 1/4 inch bit, so 0.25, and we're going to hit calculate. And yes, we know. Thanks, Mom. Okay. And probably have these too close on the sheet here. So that's a great little double check system. Honestly, didn't even catch that myself. So I'm pretty sure I just got done saying you're smarter than the machine. Well, sometimes the machine is smarter than you, and that's awesome. This is a great double check system. So all we have to do is go back here, get our selection tool, and take this one and just move it a little bit further apart. You figure you have a 1/4 inch bit, it has to have enough room to go between these things, right? Or it's going to cut into your other one. So it looks kind of crazy because it has the toolpaths that you just programmed incorrectly, might I add. Go, Christy, on there, but that's all right. You still have all your regular programming. You're going to recalculate it, hit OK again, reset the preview. Oh, I might have only had that one selected. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Reselect all of them. Go back to your profile toolpath. Make sure you actually have them all selected. Type it in again. Planter legs. And you're using your 1/4 inch bit. Hit calculate. Okay. Reset the preview. Preview. Just this one. I think this is the new one. Or is that the new one? Oh, goodness. We'll see. And it's cool, you can even like move it around while it is carving out your project. So we left just enough of a margin there, which works. You just make sure your tabs are on a thicker part, I would say. But how cool is that you can rotate this and see it carving from all the different angles, and you can see, oh my goodness, that's so cool. So I think I forgot to put the tabs back on when I recalculated it. When you don't have tabs on it, you can double click on the cutoff material and it removes it. This is a really great tip. This is a bonus tip here, not intended to be shared in this video, but you can utilize this function to make like models to show potential clients what their design would look like. So, but I showed you how to do the tabs, so you can go back and do that in your own practice. So that is everything, guys. We're like right there. We're at the finish line. Close out this simulation thing here. Hit Control S just to save your project as a working file on your computer right now. And then what we need to do next is select. Actually, don't worry about that. What we need to do next is go to our Save Toolpath button, which is that bottom right-hand button. And we want to select Visible Toolpaths to Multiple Files. We're not going to group anything. That's not going to work out in this case. But Visible Toolpaths to Multiple Files. And then however you want to save it, I tend to put in a USB because that's how I put it into my controller and run it on the CNC. I do not have that currently plugged in, so it's not showing up. But you guys know how to save stuff on a computer. I have faith in you. And so you'll save it and you'll be good to go and ready to get started with this awesome project on your CNC. So let's go.
There you have it. I hope that was helpful. I wanted to share a couple things that I wish I would have done differently. So if you're still here, go ahead and comment, whoops. That's how I know you watched the whole video and you're really here to learn. So go ahead and do that now while I go over some things that I wish I would have done differently. Number one, I wish I wouldn't have used my broken 60-degree V-bit. It caused the letters to be a lot wider than I wanted them to be and didn't have a very clean result. The second thing I wish I would have done would have been just make this slot a tiny bit more undersized. It fit like perfectly snug when I first took it off the CNC, but of course then I did some sanding, and although it's slight, it's just a little bit looser than I would like it to be. The other thing that I would have done differently has to do with the programming. I think I told you guys, as far as setting up your VCarve toolpath goes, you can either say that the cut depth starts at 0 and just re-zero your VCarve bit at the new surface after you carve out with the bowl bit. That's one option. Or you can set it at 0.4, which was your ending depth after your carve, and just re-zero it to the regular surface. It achieves the same goal, but because you're changing your bit and the bowl bit is a little bit shorter than the VCarve bit, you're gonna have to re-zero it anyways, so just keep that in mind. With each bit change, you're still re-zeroing your Z, and so just make sure you're re-zeroing it from the right part that you programmed. I guess a special note is I tried a prototype first, and I did not do the fillet function, and it didn't fit as nicely together. So just special note, I highly recommend putting those fillets in like we discussed in the video. What else? I know I screwed something else up. Oh, here's another thing I wish I would have done differently. I wasn't thinking, and I used brad nails to secure the edges of my wood down, and so when I was cutting out the profile of the tray portion, my 1/4-inch bit hit a brad nail and chipped that bit, and therefore when it was time to cut the legs out, they weren't perfectly smooth cuts anymore. So 2-bit issues, that kind of stinks. Good to have backups on hand. But besides that, I just really love how this project came out. It was really easy to do in VCarve Pro, and the fact that you can pretty much go from concept to design to execution within hours is really cool, and they are very helpful. So if you ever want to get a question answered, you can check out their forum or reach out to them on social, and you might get some help there as well. Otherwise, this was a really fun project, and it's kind of perfect for spring. So cheers, good luck to you. Reach out to me too if you have any questions. I might be able to help you. If I don't have the answer, I will try to get it to you.